All right, so the sixth grade, Unit 7, test review, graphing and statistics. So here we go. Question number 1, we're looking at this number of points in the first 5 games of the basketball season. Game 1, Game 2, 3, 4, and 5, and the points are listed there. Wants to know what the mean of the point scored is. So mean, of course, is all my numbers added together. So I'm going to sum my data, divide by the number of numbers. So when I add all my data pieces together, I get 158. So that's 38 plus 29 plus 16 plus 42 plus 33. Add them together. Again, is 158. I divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I divide by 5, and that's going to get me 31.6. And so we want to see, is that reasonable? And so, because this is a measure of center, and so if it's a measure of center, just 31.6 or 31 6/10, does that look like it's in the middle of these? And so I do have a high of 42 and a low of 16, and then 33, 29, 38. So yeah, it looks like it's right in the middle of my data. So it is a reasonable number. So if you would come up with 158 stopped, you would know that's not reasonable. Question number 2, what is the median? Well, to find the median, I need to put them first in order from least to greatest. And so going ahead and doing that. In order from least to greatest. And now median is the middle number. To find the middle number, I cross off the ends, and then I find that I have a median of 33. What is the range? Well, my range is my maximum minus my minimum. So maximum is 42 minus my minimum of 16. So 42 minus 16 is 26. So I have a range of 26. Box plot below shows the summary of how many minutes Mr. Rodriguez students do homework per day. And so I see here I have 12, 30, 50, 57, and 60. So went ahead and listed all the data points for you. Makes it easier to read. Label the 5-number summary. So 5-number summary, my minimum would be my smallest number, and I see here my smallest number is 12. And then I have my maximum, my largest number. Well, that's 60. Median is the middle number, and so my median, my Q1 and my Q3 are all 3 medians. Anytime I have a median, I put a vertical line. So where I see vertical lines, and so there's 3 vertical lines. I have a vertical line here, vertical line here, and a vertical line here. So I know that my middle vertical line is my median. My first one is my Q1, and my third is my Q3. Because Q1 is the median of the lower half of my data. Q3 is the median of the upper half of my data. So Q1 then is 30, median is 50, Q3 is 57. There's my 5-number summary. Interquartile range. Well, interquartile range is my Q3 minus my Q1, or 57 minus 30. And of course, 57 minus 30 is 27. Can we find the mean? Why or why not? Well, since this is a 5-number summary, it's going to summarize my data points. So I know my lowest is 12, my highest is 16. All my other data points are in between. So I cannot have 10 as part of my data set. I cannot have 75 as part of my data set, but I can have any number in between there. But the problem is I don't know if 20 is actually in my data or not, because it's there in that 5-number summary. It's in that quartile as a possibility, but really and truly, because this is a summary, I don't have my original data set. And so just like if you read a book summary, you don't know how many pages are in the book. You don't have all of the information contained in the book. You just have a summary. So in the same way, I don't have my original data set. I don't know all of the numbers in my data set. So if I don't have the original numbers, I cannot find the mean, and that would be why not. So as long as you wrote something along those lines, you should be in good shape. Moving on to question number 7, I have the dot plot that shows the number of hours Mrs. Darrell and Mrs. Scott students spend practicing for their spring band concert. So we're looking for the range. Well, my range is my maximum minus my minimum. So I don't have anything in 12, nothing in 11, nothing in 4. So my maximum value, so if I were to read these data, it would be 5, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 7, 7, 7, 8, 9, 9, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. And so my range is my highest, which is 10, minus my lowest or my minimum, which is 5. So 10 minus 5 is 5. Then the mode. Well, the mode is which ones appear the most. So I have 5 6s and I have 5 10s. So again, it would be 5, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. So there's 5 6s, and then I also have 5 10s. So 6 and 10 are both the mode. And also, just as a reminder, if we did not have a mode, so like if all of my data pieces occurred the same number of times and there was no mode, then I would write no mode. Question number 9, how many of Mrs. Darrell's and Mrs. Scott's students are in band? And so I can just count my dots and I would see that there's 17 students in band. So you want your label, 17 students. Next I have Coach Culpepper tallies his players' ages in a frequency table below. What percent of students are 14 years of age or older? So I look here, I have 14 or older, so 14 and 15 are all eligible. So 14 I have 10, 5, 10, and then 14. So there's 14 people that are 14, and then I have 4 that are 15. So if I add that together, I'm going to get 18 students out of a total of 30, and I can just count up my tally marks to see that there's 30. So 18 divided by 30, and so a couple ways you can do it. We can either just reduce it or simplify it down, and I would get dividing the top and bottom by 6 will give me 3 over 5. I know that benchmark, 3/5 is 60%. Or if we just divided 18 divided by 30, I would get 0.6, and then from there multiply it by 100 to get me that 60%. So either way, that will work. And I know I kind of skipped a step there, so let me write that. So 3/5 is the same as that decimal there, which is 60 hundredths, or 0.6, and then that is, of course, 60%. So 60 hundredths is 60%. Question 11. Write whether the following situations have variability or no variability. So V or NV. Number of minutes in first period class. Normally that's going to be no variability. If you put variability thinking that, well, right now with the advisory schedule it does change, then okay, that makes sense. The number of people in a grocery store at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. Well, yeah, that'll definitely vary depending on what store and what Saturday. The number of students absent per week, that'll definitely vary. That varies all of the time. The number of inches it rained over the past 3 weeks. I had students that had good arguments for both sides of this. So some students said, well, you know, every week every week the past 3 weeks worth of rain is different than it was the previous 3 weeks. Okay, I agree with that. Other students said, well, no, rained over the past 3 weeks starting right now. And of course, that's not going to change. It already happened. It can't change. That would be no variability. And I agree with that too. Just know that you don't have anything this ambiguous on the test. It's pretty clear, cut, and dry on the test. But I like the conversations that we're having. I like those thought processes that you guys are having. So I went ahead and put some of those in the review. And I'm glad that I did because it brought up some great discussion. All right, so moving forward to question number 12. What type of graph is pictured above? So kind of a trick because we know this is a histogram, but it left some space there. And so I did that on purpose. So we talked about that, but we know that this is a histogram. And then also, how many teams successfully made 1 to 5 field goals in 2015? Well, there was 0 because that 1 to 5 is part of that space. That means that there's no data in that range, so 0 teams did that. And how do I know? Well, the frequency of the goals is 0 for that, or I have a bar of 0 height. So that's another way to think about it. Stem and leaf plots. So here I need to find the median. So I can write all of my numbers out in order from least to greatest. And then when I do, I want to start crossing them off until I get something in the middle. So I have two numbers in the middle, 63 and 66. And so my median is right there in the middle. I have to find the mean of these two numbers, or what number is exactly in the middle of these two numbers. So 63 plus 66 is going to give me 129. 129 divided by 2, or the number exactly in the middle, is 64.5. So my median is 64.5. Finding the range, that's my maximum minus my minimum. So 89 minus 54. So 89 minus 54 is going to give me 35. And then I need to find the mode. Well, which number did we see the most of? So looking through here, and I do see 62 3 times, but let me keep looking. And up there's 78 and 78, but no, it looks like that's going to be it. So 62 appears the most often, or the most frequently, and so that would be my mode. Question number 17, inner quartile range. So to find that inner quartile range, I first need to find my quartiles. Oh, no, this is just talking about in general. So not the stem and leaf plot. That's okay. How do you find the inner quartile range? Well, that's just my Q3 minus my Q1. Several steps before we can even find that. First thing I need to do, least to greatest. And then once I've ordered it from least to greatest, to find my median. Then I can do find my quartile 1. Then I could find my quartile 3, which is the median of the lower half, median of the upper half. Once I've done all of that, then I can do my Q3 minus Q1, and that's going to give me my inner quartile range. So you could have just wrote this. You could have wrote all of this. And yeah, that's good. So just so you know what you're looking for on the test. All right, so question number 18. Survey of residents in Orca Bear Estates. Ask them to rate their satisfaction with the hiking trails on a scale of 1 to 4. And so they're shown on the table below. So I add up all of my pieces to see that 14 plus 25 plus 44 plus 17 is going to give me 100, which is good. Because then now that I know that it's 100, it's going to make it really easy to find that. So I know that that's the same as 14 per 100, or 14%, 25 per 100, or 25%, 44 per 100, or 44%, 17 per 100, 17%. So first one I need 14. It doesn't quite look like 14 in A, but I'm going to leave it just in case. B is definitely not 14. Maybe, but then when I look here, that's 10, there's 15. So it looks like D is probably the correct answer, but I want to check the rest of it. So that looks good. Then 25%. So I have 10, 20, and then 5. So that looks good. 44%. So that gives me 10, 20, 30, 40. And yeah, looks like it's probably okay. And then 17%, working backwards from the front. So there's 10, 15, and a little more, 17. So then D is definitely my answer. Question number 19. Describe the shape of the graph as skewed right, skewed left, or skewed symmetrical. So for those that were absent, that we didn't talk about that. Hopefully you saw me talk about it in class, but just in case you didn't. So imagine that you have somebody standing there and they're holding a skewer, one of those sometimes metal, sometimes wooden sticks that will hold food together for grilling. So you can use those to make shish kebabs, or you put shrimp on a skewer, things like that. So holding a skewer. So if I'm standing there holding a skewer and my skewer is facing to the left, well then my data would be skewed left. If I'm instead holding a skewer facing to the right, then my data would be skewed right. So that's kind of telling me what to look for. So I see here the shape of my data. I have a tail. My tail is here on the right. So it looks like, just like here, where I have my skewer facing the right. So you can imagine that this data is me, and this tail here is me holding a skewer facing to the right. And so if I do that, my data would be skewed right. Seeing here the shape of my data on the next one. So it looks like I have the skewer on this side on the left. So then my data would be skewed left. So number 19, skewed right. Number 20, skewed left. Symmetrical means that my data, so I'm going to talk about it here. Symmetrical would mean that my data is the same left and right. The tail is the same left and right. And basically, I could take that and fold it in half, and it's going to be exact or very close to exact on both sides. And so that's what it would mean to be symmetrical. So that's not the case on 19 or 20, but just so you know what that means. Question 21. The following data set represents the number of hours Mrs. Ermant spent reading each day over spring break. Create a 5-number summary as well as a box plot on the number line below. So my first step is I need to write my numbers in order from least to greatest. All right, so now that I've put them in order from least to greatest, I want to cross them off. Well, let me not get ahead of myself. So first I can find my minimum. Minimum is my smallest value. I can find my maximum, which is my largest value. So now I can find my median by crossing them off, looking for that middle data value. And so I found it here, and so it is 5. And then I need to find the median of my lower half of my data. So 5 is not part of my lower half because it is used up. So, but I have here in between 1 and 3. So 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then here, find my median of my upper half, and it's going to be right in between 7 and 8. So I could recognize that that's 7.5, or I could add it up. 7 plus 8 is 15. Half of 15 is 7.5. So either way, that is going to work and give me the same information. So now that I have my 5-number summary, I can plot that on my graph. And so 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. So there's my number line. And so here I have 0, plot my 5 points, 2, 5, 7.5 will be close to there, and then my maximum of 8. So now that I've done that, my vertical lines are going to go through my 3 medians. And so, of course, my median of 5, my median, or my Q1, which is the median of my lower half at 2, and then my median of the upper half, or my Q3. So now that I've drawn my 3 vertical lines, this is a box plot, so I'm going to go ahead and make my box. And it's also known as a box and whisker plot, so I need to make my whiskers. Now that I've done those steps, then my box plot is complete. Almost done. All right, so when looking for a job, Antonio was told that the monthly salary has a range of $876. He also knows that the starting salary is $1,793 per month. What is the maximum amount of money that he can earn in his job position? So I know my range is my maximum minus my minimum. So I wrote down my equation, substitute what I know. Well, I do know range is 876. My maximum I don't know, so I'm just going to call that X, minus my starting salary, or my minimum salary, the least that I'll make starting out, and then of course as I work there longer, I'm going to make more money. So $17.93 is going to be my starting salary. And so from here, you might automatically recognize what to do. But just in case you don't, I want to go ahead and rearrange this just a little bit. So what I need to do is add, because I have x minus 1735. So I need to add 1793. Add 1793 to both sides. And so when I do that, I'm going to get x equals, or my maximum amount is going to be $2,669. And then I want to check that, does that make sense? So my maximum is $26.69 minus my minimum, or my starting, $17.93. And so does that make sense? So when I subtract this out, I do find that $876 is that difference. And so now that I know that this does make sense, and I was able to check my answer. Question 23, each quartile represents what percent of the data? Well, I know a quartile is quarts. A quart is 1/4 of a gallon. A quarter is 1/4 of a dollar. And so as a percent, because that's what that's asking me, 1/4 is, not 24. A fourth is 25%. All right, interquartile range represents what percent of the data? Well, my interquartile range is the range from my Q3 to my Q1. It represents this whole piece here. And this is 25%. This is 25%. So I have 25% and 25%. And so that's going to total up to 50% of my data. Yeah, that too. So 25% plus 25%. Interquartile range represents 50% of my data. And that's the last question for our test review. Hopefully this helped. If not, see me in tutorials, ask me in class, and good luck for the test on Wednesday.